afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Ali, Coram, and Justin Nielsen here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, where we saw gains across the board, maybe a little bit of a fade off of highs today, Justin, but we will break down what we're looking to see this week after some notable shifts in the market tone and what's moving underneath the surface last week, making this
Yes.
week pretty critical as earnings season heats up.
Absolutely. And we'll go over a few stocks kind of with that rotation theme. So we'll talk about in the energy space, we'll look at Diamondback Energy, FANG is the ticker symbol there. We'll also look at JPMorgan in the financial space and software. Maybe that's not, getting clobbered as much as you would think. It's showing some signs of life. CrowdStrike is a name in the software area that we'll look at. And I do have a position in CrowdStrike.
Great. Okay, we will take a look at those stocks, but first let's analyze the major indexes. The Nasdaq closing up about 0.4% on the day, while the S&P 500 up 0.3%. The Dow outpacing those two with a gain of about 0.5%, though it also faded off highs somewhat. But once again, small caps front and center with the Russell 2000. Look at that, Justin, up 1.8% or so on the day. Just an astounding move here in small caps. Let's start there.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was definitely when we saw the CPI numbers come out on Thursday, there was this big shift, right? So the 10-year treasury came down. Small caps usually get a little bit of a boost with the 10-year treasury, and especially the inverted yield curve that we've been, dealing with for, it seems like forever now. But that's getting less inverted. So when you look at the 2-year versus the 10-year, and that is something that is more favorable for small cap companies. If you think about it, it makes sense, right? The mega cap companies that have been in favor, look, they're sitting on piles of cash. They're not as sensitive to changes in the 10-year treasury yield. They don't have the borrowing costs or borrowing requirements that a lot of the small cap companies do. And so that's one of the reasons why these are kind of getting a little bit of a boost. But, there also is this kind of mean reversion that happens in the market. The things that are out of favor, for a while tend to come back into favor. The things that are in favor, tend to revert back to the mean, kind of come back to their average. And so that's just a normal part of cycles in the market. And, some of this may be a little bit having to do with that as well.
Yeah. And so in terms of what we want to see from here, we want to see this strength hold up, right? We don't want to see it immediately fall apart. Like, we've gotten some teases, right? Oh, the small caps are going to get in gear. They're going to get in gear. I mean, this time
Right.
it does look, here in February, right? We had, a number of back-to-back gains, a lot of volatility, in March as well. Looked like we were going to get going. This time does look and feel a little different, but we'll see, right? It's one thing to have a couple of strong days, but another thing entirely for that momentum and strength to continue. And then on the other hand, for the tech side of things, with that rotation out of the mega caps, Thursday was a bad day, but now from here, are they going to just, trade sideways and hold up while handing the baton elsewhere? Or are we going to see continued cracks and deterioration there, right, Justin? We're going to be looking for all those clues.
Yeah, that's definitely the big question here. What happens going forward? One of the things that was very noticeable about Thursday's action was how, despite the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq being down as much as they were, that advancers versus decliners were much in favor of the advancers, well in favor of the advancers. And so this is why we look at the equal weighted ETFs, and RSP, being a little bit stronger than SPY lately, QQEW being a little bit stronger than the NASDAQ 100. Now, both of those did kind of falter a little bit today. They were off their highs, like both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 were. But and underperformed slightly their market weighted counterparts, but they are still showing a lot more power. But one more thing, you made a really good point on the small caps about all of those false starts that we had. So I would say that one of the things that does look different this time is look at how we cleared the previous resistance areas. Before, a lot of times what was happening is we would come right up to the resistance and kind of get turned away, right up to a trend line, get turned away. And you can see this on the weekly too. If you go to the weekly chart, we've been talking about that 2000 level or 200 on IWM that was so important. And it just seemed like it was going back and forth. This is the first time it's really kind of cleared and gotten,
all that congestion,
right, a strong lift above all of that congestion. And so now we're kind of, back to areas that we haven't seen since 2022. So it's quite a bit of resistance that's been cleared there. And so again, this is what's making it feel a little different this time. We've been talking about how Lucy's been taking the football away from Charlie Brown a number of times on this trade, but maybe Lucy's going to leave the football there for a little bit.
Yeah. All right. And anything else on the indexes before we go, Justin?
Well, I think, one more thing to just kind of address is a little bit more in the sector space, IBIT.
Yes.
We talked about the 10-year treasury, but, one of the things that also, this is an unfortunate, thing that happened this weekend where there was an assassination attempt on Trump. He's fine, and kind of came out with a very strong picture and some better prospects for his candidacy. And so there is kind of a shift here that's going for, okay, if Trump is more likely now to become president, in this election, what does that mean for some other areas? And one of the areas, IBIT with Bitcoin, he is a more cryptocurrency favored, favoring president. So that's one of the things that was helping. An area that maybe wasn't so favored is solar. So if you look at TAN, this is an area that got hit pretty hard today because, another Trump presidency is not something that would be as good for solar. So this is something that, putting all the politics aside, you have to think of, okay, what does the market think about this? There's the uncertainty versus certainties. There's the policies of different candidates and what that could mean for the market. But also know that a lot of things can change before the election. So you have to do that one day at a time thing as well.
Yes. Let's take a look at some other sector ETFs here. Software, which you mentioned, perhaps money flowing back into this area. I mean, if you look at a couple weeks ago, we saw a 5-week winning streak that a number of us were, I mean, if it's a stock, right? Oh, 5 weeks up in a row, maybe we want to see some sort of handle shake out, sideways action, let the moving averages catch up. It's kind of what we got, Justin. So to see an upside reversal last week, some support at the 21-day seems like an early entry here for the software sector ETF.
Yeah, and look, this is again ideal action. It got right up to those previous highs, took a break. This is what we often ask for. But of course, if you own it, it's never fun when it happens. And it did look like it was in some trouble because, that day that it was first day off its high, you saw ServiceNow come down really strong. And look, upgrades, downgrades, they happen all the time. It's the reaction that matters more. But that reaction to the ServiceNow downgrade was, pretty excessive. And so that really seemed to be weighing on a lot of the software stocks. But, here we are. ServiceNow got support right there at its 50-day moving average line. IGV is, getting support right at its 21-day moving average line. So yeah, this looks like a very normal, natural pullback that's just kind of adding a handle onto that cup, formation. So that is ideal action, and I don't think it's time to count software out.
Okay. And we can also take a look at chips. Here's SMH down about 0.2% today. So not participating, but I mean, this has been the leading group lately. So looks like it's just in a position to rest a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, and it deserves it. Look, a lot of these stocks have been going up so much. It would deserve a rest. It's certainly, you can't say that it's broken by any stretch. I mean, it hasn't even crossed the 10-day moving average line yet. So this is something that I think you still need to keep an eye on. But you see that the relative strength, and this is what I would do in the future here too. Look at that relative strength and look at those moving average lines. It's great that we have those moving average lines on Market Surge, so you can kind of see, okay, is this now kind of breaking a trend in terms of its relative strength? So far, the trend is intact. So while it was down today, and certainly got a big hit a couple days ago on Thursday, it's not getting destroyed here. So I think we might have to be flexible, wait and see how some of these things play out.
Right. And especially with earnings season upon us, I mean, there's a lot that could change very quickly, either which way,
Yeah.
So it just depends. But I think it's going to be a critical couple of weeks for software and chips in particular, because those have been the leaders. And I know a lot of traders out there have considerable profit cushions in a number of the leading names. So the AI theme really is going to be on showcase these next couple of weeks, and could be make or break what these companies say and how things shake out. Okay, let's also take a look at XHB, the home builders, also of course interest rate sensitive, and a big move on Thursday. Did fade today, but not all too surprising to see where a little bit of resistance was hit here, Justin. But not too bad. If we get a couple of tight days here, maybe we could see a move higher once again.
Well, and kind of like what we were just talking about with IGV, right? It kind of did what we asked it to. It came right up to an area, stayed fairly tight, got supported as 21-day moving average line. So it would be reasonable to say that this is something that could happen here too. Double bottoms with handles are something that we have in our model books. There's a lot of them, and it is kind of another area where you can get into a stock when you see that kind of handle form. So not just the middle of the W, but that handle sometimes.
Okay, and then last but not least, on the ETF front, let's take a look at XLE Energy with a day of outperformance here, up 1.5%.
Yes, this was the best performing sector spider ETF. We often take a look at the 11 sector spider ETFs to just kind of get a handle on where things are moving. It's also useful to actually have a number of different ETFs in there. So within the XLE, for instance, we know that ExxonMobil and Chevron dominate this particular ETF. The combination is about over 40% for the two of those. So, sometimes we'll also look at an XOP or a OIH to kind of dive a little bit more into those, or oil itself by looking at USO. So by kind of having the overall sector, the spot price, and a few different areas, you kind of get a real sense of what's happening in the area. And, OIH, the field services, the oil services seemed a little bit, weaker, but a really strong day for that today. Overall strength for explorers and producers. And you saw that also in USO, the spot price having a lot of, I'm sorry, the spot price wasn't as great, but the companies themselves were so much stronger today. So it's very interesting when you get that kind of divergence.
And this still setting up here a big move in the price of oil in the last couple of weeks. So
yeah, and
again, you're seeing that pause.
Right, exactly. Right. I guess that's the theme for the day, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're talking about energy stocks. Let's go to Diamondback Energy in the U.S. Explorers and Producers Group. Ticker here is FANG, showing its teeth today, up 3.3%. Breaking out.
So this is one that we do have on Swing Trader. We put it on as we were seeing this rotation unfold, and now we're getting kind of a follow up on the move that it had on Thursday. Nice breakout today. This cup with handle is very shallow, a depth of just 13% for the cup, and then just 4% for the handle. So that's really tight action, and that's something that's a real positive. So the fact that this got back above its 50-day moving average line, and then the handle stayed above the 21-day moving average line, I think is very positive. As I mentioned, we got in as it was crossing that downtrend, and then it was a little bit of a shakiness on Friday, but a nice follow through
Mhm.
today and a breakout. So this is looking positive. But as we mentioned at the outset of the show, we are going to have earnings coming up on a lot of stocks going forward. You know, the financials have started the ball rolling, but other sectors are going to be picking this up. So FANG is coming up in 21 days.
Yeah. Well, speaking of financial stocks reporting earnings, Justin, we had JPMorgan out with its results this morning. The reaction positive here, shares up 2.5%, slightly above average volume. And I think the tricky thing with a lot of these financial stocks, Justin, is they were presenting early entries and breakouts right ahead of their reports. But I guess for JP Morgan, still actionable with the move today, some might say.
Yeah. And the earnings were actually on Friday morning. And so
That's right. I
it
was thinking
was,
Goldman
yeah, it
was
was
out
Goldman. Yeah,
this
there
morning.
were a number of financials that, are all back to back.
Thank you
And
for correcting me.
yeah, just in case people thought they were going crazy. And what was interesting though is that the reaction initially was negative, right?
Hmm.
But what I thought was interesting was the way that it closed on Friday.
Yeah.
Well off its lows, supported the 21-day moving average line. That is a good signal, right? That's showing that okay, there might have been an initial selling, but that the buyers did come in. Whenever we see something close in the upper half of the range, or even above 40% in the closing range. In the case of JP Morgan, this was 53%. So looking at 40% as our threshold for support, whenever you're off the lows by that much, it's kind of saying, hey, the buyer stepped in. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what happened with JP Morgan Chase.
Right.
Nice follow up today. And again, this is not alone. If we just take a quick look at XLF, there's a lot of kind of supporting evidence here. There's a lot of strength in this sector, whether it be Berkshire Hathaway,
Hmm.
Goldman Sachs, as you mentioned, that had earnings, some of the other banks. So
Right. Even the
there's,
regionals, you know,
yeah,
with the interest rate sort of play there, have
yes,
been
exactly.
excelling.
So yeah, again, you look at XLF, and this has been another one where there have been a few attempts where it seems like, okay, will it or won't it?
Mhm.
But it's certainly with this breakout above resistance in XLF and more stocks also looking better in the sector.
Right.
That's kind of giving you a double whammy in terms of confidence here.
Mhm. And we mentioned the software sector. So here's a look at cybersecurity software leader CrowdStrike, closing up 1.6% on the day. We had a number of weeks of tight sideways action, a shakeout last week, a close off lows. Which we know is key for showing that subtle strength. 2 tight days and a move higher today. If we look on the weekly, it's support at the 10-week line. So another potentially actionable opportunity here. And Justin, you said you do own shares.
Yeah, I do. I do own some shares, and this is starting with the daily chart where you pointed out that that day where it kind of got that support. So here again, it was a day where it was 46% closing range, so up in that 40% or above area. And then yes, the next day was at the lows of its closing range, but it was an inside day. So as you said, very tight action, and then we kind of had another little shakeout this morning as we undercut the lows of the previous 3 days. So an outside day, meaning that the high is higher than the previous day and the low is lower than the previous day, kind of engulfing a lot of the action from the last few days. But then we're kind of closing right back above the 21-day moving average line. So this one is looking interesting. Again, kind of speaks to the software play not quite being dead. It's hard when you've been looking so much at tech, and then it's kind of like there's a rotation out of tech. It might be very easy to just kind of discount everything there, but software does seem to be holding up pretty well. So maybe too soon to count it out.
Okay. And then, yeah, it seems like obviously it would be great to see CrowdStrike get above its 10-day moving average and then back above that 400
Yes.
level.
Yeah.
So potential ad spots, Justin.
Right. And so sometimes it's what's nice to do is, and this happened with Fang as well, right? For Swing Trader, we started a position as it got above a downtrend and a handle, and then you can add to it as it breaks out. In the case of CrowdStrike, you can get in a little bit early, and then if it gets above that 400 level that you mentioned, yeah, that would be a great place to add. And so it kind of gets you a little bit more wiggle room, because if you bought it as soon as it crossed 400 and then it pulled in a little bit, you might be feeling some pressure. But if you got a little bit of an early entry, that can help sometimes. Now, especially in a case like this, you're not risking too much, because if it goes under today's low, you know it's not working the way that you expected. So you're risking a little, but you have a lot of potential on the upside. And so that's a good risk reward ratio.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Justin. And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live. And we hope you join us, investors.com/IBD Live, for all the details there on our daily morning live stream. We will see you there. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.